All right, so make sure you have your name on it. Now, in my opinion, I think this chapter is easier than what we just walked out of. Last chapter, all the lessons sort of built on each other, right? So if you didn't know the stuff from before, it made the stuff coming a little bit harder to do. Now, in this chapter, we have 7 different lessons, but the lessons don't necessarily build on each other. They're all related topics, right? But if you don't master the stuff from day 2, it doesn't not necessarily make day 3 a little bit harder, all right? So it's easier in that sense. It's harder as in there's lots of different ideas that you got to sort of now remember, okay? So day 1 is going to be pretty much a review of grade 8, maybe things.
And grade 7.
Maybe things a little bit more difficult to the grade 9 level. The first thing I want to talk about is axes. When we have a graph, we have x-axis and y-axis, a horizontal and a vertical axis. So you need to be very clear which one's the x-axis and which one's the y-axis. So is up and down x or y?
Y.
Good. All right? So that you need to be very clear about. Up and down is your y-axis. Left and right is your x-axis. Okay? And now, the way I tell my students, all the way from grade 8 up to when I taught grade 12, because this is something that all these students forget, is I did a head nod to help remind students. Usually when we say yes, we go like this. Yes, Y for yeah, yes. Up and down. No, left and right. X. Okay? Make sense? So use that to help remind you. All right? Okay, so once you know what X and Y is, now you can read off values. So I'll have this point A here. What is its coordinates? When I say that, what is the value for X in space in here? What is the value for Y?
2.
2.
3. Would be 2.
I want 2 numbers. I want one number for X. I want one number for Y.
2y.
The Y is 2. 1, 2. Okay.
4x.
And 4X. 1, 2, 3, 4. So over here, 4 for the X. That's what Chase said, and you got that right. And 2 for the Y. Okay. How about B? What is the X value? What is the Y value?
-3 for y.
-3 for Y. Okay, that's really important. This spot is 0. So you go below 0, you're going negative. 1, 2, 3, -3 for Y.
-1 for x.
And thank you. And -1 for X. Going left of 0 is negative. So -1.
Wait, but how do we figure out the numbers though?
On here,
Yeah.
I've given you a little 5 in the corner to tell you what the spacing is. So each line was 1. If you notice.
Each line is 1.
1. There should be a scale on each one. If there isn't a scale, you assume it's 1. So I had numbers in the corner to highlight that. Okay. Now, that's the X coordinate and the Y coordinate. Now you can list them in brackets like this, and that's called an ordered pair or coordinates. Okay. So for point A, that would be 4, 2. And it's always in this order, X, Y. Okay? So if I give you the values in this, you can tell which one's the X, which one's the Y. How do I remember this? And this we use it a lot. This is always in alphabetical order. X comes before Y. Okay? So on the next one, for point B, the X value was -1 and the Y value is -3. That is written as an ordered pair. Okay? So now I want you to practice this. For question 1, I want you to put 3 points on this graph. C, D, and E. Oops, I'll do that in orange. C, D, and E. Remember, it goes X, Y. Practice drawing these points and label them C, D, and E. I'll give you a couple of seconds. Okay. Takes a little while to remember how this works.
Yeah, because we
Alright.
haven't been here.
So C, 1 and -2. So 1 is here in the X, down 2 for -2. That's where C should have been. D is -4. So left 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and down 2, 1, 2. That's where D is. E is -3 and 4. So in the X direction, here's 0. We've got to go left 1, 2, 3, up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where E would be. Okay. So notice that. Hopefully you should notice that. X is positive here, and Y is positive here. X is negative here, and Y is negative here, right? So we're not going to really talk too much about this in Math 9, but you get it in later grade. You have 4 coordinates. You have quadrants, quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4 sort of shows up every once in a while. And they're sort of, all depends on the sign. So everything's positive here. X is negative here, and Y is positive here. And you look at the signs. Look for the trends there. Okay, now, next what I want to work on is graphing tables. Now, tables can be written in 2 different styles. You can have horizontal tables over like this, and you have vertical tables like this. And the key is to know which column is the X column, which column is the Y column. These tables should be written in a standard format. Yes, Riley?
Are rulers needed for this graph?
Yeah, rulers come in handy for drawing straight lines.
So do we need for this?
Yeah, you will need it for this particular graph. Okay, now, if your table is horizontal, like this one here, the top one is your X, and your bottom one is always going to be your Y.
Okay.
If your table is vertical, like the one over here, the left column is X, and the right column is Y. So to help students remember this, I say alphabetical again.
What?
All right, X comes before Y. When you are reading a book, you go left to right, alphabetical order here, X, Y. You go from top to bottom, X, Y, alphabetical order.
So which one's X and which one's Y on that hours and wage?
That's my next question to you. On this one, which one goes in the X axis? Is it hours or wage?
I would say hours.
Hours, because that is the standard format. So this is X, oops, and this is Y. So that's going to tell you how to graph. Now, when we're graphing, we need to label our axes. Our x-axis is hours. So we write down hours like this. Okay. Now, the 8 bracket HR tells you the units. What is this measured in?
Hours.
Hours. And the other axis is wage and dollar sign.
Ka-ching, ka-ching.
Okay. Now, typically on the axes, we have a little x and a y for the variable. In this case, we have these little letters here. These are the variables. It's not x and y, but h and w. So this axis is h here, and this one is w. Right? So a review of before stuff, but some new stuff thrown in there as well, because I'm not sure if your previous teacher talked about this, right? Okay, now after that, it becomes pretty straightforward. Right, we graph these points. Right, the first point, I'm doing blue, the x value is 1, and the y value is 2. So you start at 1, up to, place the dot. 1, up to, place a dot. Now, looking around, when I was looking around the class, I saw everybody doing it pretty nicely. But I think some people have a tendency of putting little dots like this to help find their way up to wherever their dot they want to plot. Please don't do that. These little dots that you put in there sort of get away of the overall graph that you're doing. So if you need help trying to find out where you put your dot is, just use your finger to trace over the line. So 1 up to 2. You just leave the final dot there. Right? Yeah, or the ruler there. Next point, 2 and 4. So starting at 2 on x up to 4, we're going to place a dot. There we go. Then the next one, I'll use orange. X value of 3, y value of 6. Place a dot. And finally, 4 and 8. 4 and 8.
This trend of us going upwards.
Yeah, so everything just about everything we're going to do in this unit is going to be a line. So if your graph doesn't look like a line, chances are you've made a mistake. All right. So next is we draw a line through these points. Now this one is important. You need a straight edge, a ruler. So if you don't have one, please come grab one. All right. So we just use our ruler to connect the dots. All right. And draw a straight line through them all. Okay. Now, a ruler is really important because you'll be asked to use this graph later on. And you'll need to read up values in between points. And if you did a freehand line, that is going to be a very, very rough guess. Whereas the ruler will give you a more of an accurate read. That's why a ruler is going to be very important here. Okay? So let's do another one. More practice here. All right? So this time we have this table here. We have 2 columns. One's called time, one's called distance. Which one's on the x, which one's on the y? Riley?
The time is on the x and the distance is on the y.
Okay, yeah. That's the order that these tables show up in. X, then followed y. So therefore, down here, we're going to write down time with our units is hours. Right? And we have distance on the y, and our units are kilometers. Now, on this table, yes, Fraser? Yeah, go ahead. On this table, we don't have any letters for our variables. So we can make some up. What would be a good letter to use for time? Yes, Riley?
T.
Yeah, so how about we put a T here? And what would be a good letter to use for distance?
KN.
Oh, those are units.
K.
You can use K, or I would suggest maybe the letter D for distance. All right? All right, so take a second and graph these 3 points. And I'll put them up on the screen. So I'm hoping when you drew your dots, if they look like that. 0, 0, 1 and 3, 2 and 6. Your line's going to do that. This is a very practical unit because you use the stuff in this chapter a lot from future math and science classes. There's lots of relationships you do. Voltage, if you graph it, it look like that. Your density stuff that you do your graphs, it look like that. So it's going to show up a lot for you guys. It's a little bit painful for me to mark because I have to check every single one of your dots, but it's very practical. Okay, So next, on the next page, I want to talk about graphing equations. So this is generally how an equation for a line looks like. Okay. Now, don't write down the next little bit. If we want to graph a line, we need some points, right? How many points should we have? Do you guys remember that from last year? Did your teachers tell you how many points you should have for graphing a line? No? Okay. So if this is my axis, don't draw this. At the bare minimum, you need 2 points to draw a line. You can draw a line through those two. Now the problem with 2 points is you can't tell if you made a mistake. Right? So if I throw in a third point, so I'll throw a purple one in right here. Now, you know, all three of those points are my data. You can tell that, hey, I made a mistake somewhere. The line could be going like this, maybe, or maybe like this. So 3 points let you know that you made a mistake somewhere. Right? 4 points lets you know where you made the mistake. So if I draw a 4th point in now, and I put it here, you can now tell which point maybe you graphed wrong or calculated wrong. Which point's the wrong point? The red one, the orange one right here, right? So ideally, I'd like for you to, when you're graphing, pick 4 points. Practically, sometimes we get away with 3 points, right? So that's how many points we're going to pick, right? We'll try to do 3 to 4 times each time. 2 leaves too many chances for mistakes. Now, so we can use any points we want to graph, right? But there's certain numbers that make things easier. I like picking a small number like 0. The 0 comes in handy in calculations. When you times it by anything, everything goes to 0. It's nice for adding and subtracting. The math is really easy with 0. So I use the value 0 a lot when I'm graphing. So what you do is use your equation that you're given to find the matching y value, right? So I have an x value of 0. My equation says 2x plus 1 is equal to the value of y. Where we see where we see x, we place the value of x that we want to calculate with. This time we want to calculate with 0. So I'm going to replace the x with a 0 and do this calculation.
How do we do that on a calculator?
We can use our head. We use BEDMAS. We go 2 times 0 plus 1. What do we get? 1. Yeah, thank you. 2 times 0 is 0 plus 1 equals 1. So this is saying when the x value is 0, for this relationship, the y value is 1. So we now have 1 point. And some other numbers I like to use is the number 1. Because number 1 is very nice in calculations. When you're multiplying by 1, the number doesn't change. Adding and subtracting is much easier. So I like using the 1 a lot. So we're going to do the same thing with 1. And we'll do this one in green. So we have our equation, 2x plus 1. And we want to find the matching y value. So where we see x, I'm going to put in a 1. Thank you, Lachlan. So 3. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1. We get 3.
Why does that look like a Jolly Green Giant color? It looks like you killed a Jolly Green Giant and just stuck onto the board.
Okay. And now let's do 2. We have 2. I'll do this in black, I guess. 2 plus 2 plus 1.
5.
equals 5. Thank you. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 equals 5. All right? And finally, the last one, I'll do that in 7. Thank you. Okay, so now we have 2 times 3, which is 6, plus 1 gives us 7. Okay, not too bad. All right? So now we have 4 points. We're going to graph these 4 points on this chart. Right? We have 0 and 1 is my first point. So starting at 0 up to 1, that's my orange point. So I'm going to put that there. Then I have 1 and 3 in green. 1 here, up 3. I place a dot. Oops, in green.
2 over 5.
Then it's 2 and 5. I want some black. 2 to 5, so up there.
3 and 7.
3 and 7, thank you.
Draw a line through it.
And we draw a line through it.
Make it 2.
Yeah. Okay. So for the next question, I want you to see if you can do it yourself. Come up with the points. I've given you suggested x values to use and graph them. Right? In a couple of seconds, I'll write up some of the values. So if you're struggling with it, I'll put the values up there. Then you go straight to graphing. So give yourself a chance here. Figure out what are these points and graph them.
Yeah, even outside,
I'm glad that most of you have got this. Some people still need a little bit of help.
I'm like, is that UFC?
And I just work out the calculations here for you if you are struggling. So you have something to copy down.
And how many days until the wedding? Oh yeah, 3 days until Christmas. Yeah, I went to Richmond for 2 months. And I still need to do my
Times 7. 3 times 3 plus 2, 9, 11.
Around that 7. That's supposed to be 8.
6, 8. Yeah, sorry, I made a mistake there. Thank you.
That's supposed to be 8.
Yes, it is. 8. That's a messy 8. Okay. So then you just plot the points. 0 and 2. 1 and 5. 2 and 8. 3 and 11.
Orange. Or no, I just used that weird.
I use the same colors I used up here, so you can sort of see.
It looks like they killed the Jolly Green Giant. Yes, you were right.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. Actually, it was more Keelan Green.
And you draw a line through there. Okay.
Yeah,
Which chapter that we did?
never mind.
And that's it.
It looks like he killed Shrek.